This is the voice of the Report of the Week, signing on. Well, hello, ladies, gentlemen, and everyone listening in to this latest edition of the VORW International Podcast. Thank you all so much for tuning in. It is the mid to late July 2024 edition of the program. Hope everyone out there listening in is feeling and doing all right. Got a good show planned for you this evening. As for me, everything's going on my end. I'm happy to say, life always has its bumps in the road metaphorically. You have your good days, your bad days, but hey, you know what? Everything's still going, and that's more than I can ask for, to be honest. So, everything's going smooth enough. Well, in this latest show, going to talk about whatever's on my mind to begin with. And then we'll open up the email and read some of your messages and talk about whatever you want me to talk about, essentially. The floor will be yours. Alright, first and foremost, there is one piece of fan art to feature in today's program. Admittedly, there hasn't been much in the way of fan art, and it's okay. But I would like to draw your attention. The piece of fan art featured in today's program, credit to a user on Instagram, and the profile is ki.babalu, ki.babalu on Instagram. That was a nice piece of fan art there. If you do want to make a piece of fan art going forward, you're welcome to. Do whatever you want with it, have fun, and just send it as an email attachment to VORWINFO@gmail.com. Now, if you do send in a piece of fan art, just make sure you let me know how you'd like to be credited. It could be via name, a social media profile, a website that more of your work can be found at, or if you'd like to be anonymous, just to let me know. But just make sure you let me know how you'd like to be credited, because you took the time to make this piece, send it my way, so the very least I can do is give credit where credit is due. Alright. Another thing that I would like to mention, I was very happy to see this, and I mention this because I think you've probably heard in previous broadcasts, especially if you're a regular listener, at the beginning of each program I'll give the whole spiel, about being able to support the broadcasts financially, donating via PayPal or Patreon or advertising on the program if one wishes. And the reason why I always make a big deal out of that is because, number one, this program doesn't really make any money. If it is even monetized at all on YouTube, the CPM is rock bottom. Most of the time, it gets demonetized for one reason or another. A lot of the time because I'll talk about current events, or, sometimes my discussions aren't always all smiles or what have you. And the program is not monetized anywhere else. So if you listen on Spotify or iTunes or SoundCloud or any other podcast platform, I don't make a single cent from any of that. So, number one, this program doesn't really make anything. And secondly, the radio show that I do in conjunction with this, I actually have to pay to do it. It's a labor of love. It's something that I really enjoy doing, but I have to pay for every single hour of airtime that I'm heard at, and not the other way around. And then, of course, there are some production costs that go into this podcast itself. So, that's why I occasionally mention, I try not to be too in your face about it, but I like to mention in regards to the financial situation of this program, being able to support it. But, I have to tell you, when I put out the call for supporting this broadcast by advertising on it about a month or so ago, I did not expect the response, just the level of interest in that came in. I was really taken back by it in a good way, and there were a lot of folks that approached with interest, and I am very pleased to welcome aboard a few new advertisers to this program. As a matter of fact, there are 3 new advertisers and sponsors, in addition to the 2 others that we already have. So I really proudly want to welcome them all aboard. And just understand, it's their support. I say this sincerely, it's their support that's keeping this program going. And especially is keeping my radio show going. You know, if you listen to that, you could thank the sponsors that you're about to hear for that. Because it is through their support. I mean, they weren't looking that good financially, to be honest. And I have them to thank. They turned this around. They really did. So take a listen. A few sponsors here, 3 new sponsors that I am proud to welcome to this show. And I'm so thankful to have them here. So take a listen, and if it's something that you find of interest, make sure you check them out. Today's episode is brought to you by Bluegill Enterprises, LLC, where creative design meets craftsmanship. Whether you're envisioning a serene patio oasis, a sturdy privacy fence, or a bespoke structure that stands out, Bluegill Enterprises is your go-to. Born in the Midwest but crafted in Oregon, Bluegill was founded to bring creative design to backyards, homes, and farmsteads. They specialize in one-of-a-kind designs tailored to your needs. From custom carpentry to intricate construction, and even rock and earth work, they do it all. Bluegill proudly serves Oregon's Willamette Valley. Contact Bluegill Enterprises today at bluegill.ent@gmail.com. That's BLUEGILL.ENT@gmail.com, or visit their website at bluegillenterprises.com, BLUEGILLENTERPRISES.com. VORW listeners will receive a 10% discount. Just mention the show. Let their expertise and creativity make your dream outdoor space a reality. This broadcast is brought to you by Wayland Media, your Swiss Army knife creative studio. Are you ready to launch your own business, book, or album, but you're still on the search for branding that feels like you and your work? Look no further. Based in Seattle, Washington, having worked with hundreds of individuals and businesses nationwide, Wayland Media is the creative powerhouse of Christopher Miller, a multidisciplinary director, designer, and photographer. His studio has a passion for allowing others to tell their story through all visual mediums, including logos, cover artwork, motion graphics, merch design, web design, action, and lifestyle photography. In its 12 years of experience, Wayland Media has worked with musicians and authors to global telehealth companies in order to bring their brand vision to life. With a concentration on storytelling in the design space, Wayland Media breathes new air into the stark and stale landscape of today, ready and willing to collaborate with you. Take your project to the next level of professionalism with a free quote, and, as an extra incentive, listeners of VORW will receive a 20% discount. Just send an inquiry to chris@waylandmedia.co, chris@waylandmedia.co, chris@waylandmedia.co. Receive a free project quote with a 20% discount. Wayland Media, your friendly neighborhood creative. And now, back to the program. Do you need some original music for an advert or a jingle for your podcast? Perhaps you're developing an app that needs a catchy tune, or a game that needs a standout soundtrack. Michael Monaghan is an experienced and versatile British drummer, musician, and composer based in Berlin, Germany, and he's here to help you. Are you a wrestler in need of a new theme tune? Does the highlights reel from Grandma's funeral need a somber soundtrack? Or perhaps you simply need an experienced drummer and percussionist to play a part on your new song. Michael has got you covered. From top-rated TV series and blockbuster films to elite fashion ads, Michael's music can be heard in a variety of high-profile productions, including the Netflix hit Heist and Harrison Ford's recent film, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Does an elevator near you need an uplifting ditty? Maybe your hotline needs holding music. Why not commission a custom composition to accompany the uncorking of that vintage wine you've been saving? This isn't machine-made music computed by algorithms. These are good old-fashioned, man-made, human-played beats and musical beds. So if you're ready to elevate your project with unique bespoke music, then drop Michael a line today. You can contact him at michaelmonaghan@gmail.com. That's michaelmonaghan@gmail.com. michaelmonaghan@gmail.com. Everyone needs high-quality original music, but not everyone knows it yet. Alright, and again, if you do want to advertise on the program, you could always reach out to me, VORWINFO@gmail.com. I'll send you an information packet and see what you think. And if you'd like to donate to the program, help keep it going, you could send a donation via PayPal to VORWINFO@gmail.com or via Patreon, patreon.com/The Report of the Week. If you support the program on the Patreon, through your donation you can access all my radio shows on demand. That's probably thousands of hours of additional content at this point. It's the very least I could do as a way of giving back for your support. Well, this last month or so, boy, what a month, right? I think that essentially goes without saying. I'm sitting here, guess it's late July, and I'm thinking to myself, how to cover everything that's happened, I guess, or should I? The question, as I was sitting here, I've recorded this program in segments. I think most of you who listen regularly know that. That's just how it works. It's how it works best. That's my methodology. I try to get here to the microphone when I feel up to doing it, and cracked away at it here and there. Anyway, I was sitting here. I want to get this show out. I don't want to keep anyone waiting anymore, but I've been sitting here thinking about how I want to cover, what do I want to do with it? Do I want to talk about the current events here in the U.S.? And I was sitting here this afternoon, I was thinking about it, getting a little antsy, I guess, because I want to get this done, but I was feeling indecisive, and then that holds you up, I guess. What is there to say about it that hasn't been said? Right? There's nothing for me to contribute to any of this discussion. So I don't know. I really don't know. I think we all know what happened. We know what happened with Trump. We know what happened with Biden. And you can hear any charged up, fired up take you ever want to hear. There's no shortage of that. Certainly it's not like anyone's being deprived anything if you don't get the play-by-play report here on this program. But what I would recommend for everyone, if you do want to hear my full analysis, and this is why, I promote the show. I promote the hell out of it for good reason, because it's something that I am proud of. I genuinely am. I like doing it. But my radio show, I recommend, if you don't listen to it already, that you go ahead and lend an ear. I cover all these current events, and I impart my thoughts on them without any sort of fear or coercion or pressure. I just talk about the news, and I talk about how I feel about the news, and, that's all that there is to it. But if you want to go back in time and sort of listen, you could always check out the Patreon page. I have the archive of all those shows available there for your listening pleasure. And after the assassination attempt on Trump, I talked for probably an hour about it. And I discussed it in great detail. I covered every single detail that there is to it. And then I talked about how I feel about it. I gave my opinion, which I even said was wishful thinking, and I think time has already proved that to be the case. But I couldn't care less. And same thing with the Biden situation, him dropping out and Kamala Harris being the likely nominee. Talked about that too. I talked right as it happened. I said, you watch the polls. They're going to start swinging her way. And this is essentially what some pollsters are referring to as the sort of honeymoon bump, because now there's a lot of excitement, right? A lot of people on the left think, well, we have a candidate now that can actually possibly win. So you're having this sort of bounce in the polls toward her. I also said in the broadcast, the question is going to be not if there's going to be a bump, because of course there is, and we've seen that. Is it going to last? And that's the question. We're not going to know the answer to that until probably September or so, because you got the DNC and the VP pick and all of that coming up. So, you're not really going to know until September. All I will say, if you really want to be a poll watcher, if this honeymoon phase, essentially, as they're calling it, comes to an end, and Trump starts rebounding in the polls already, even as the DNC has yet to start, or as it's ongoing, then those in Kamala Harris's camp should be very concerned. Right now, I would still say, me personally, because, I was open about a prediction for the election. I really was. I said I thought Trump was going to win, in the matchup against Biden. Right now, I think he still is the favorite, but I think it's much closer now, much closer than it was from him, against Biden. I think now it's going to come up again to the typical swing states, the Rust Belt. I don't know how much Georgia, Nevada, and Arizona are necessarily going to be in play this year, but, it's all going to come down again to Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. Those are going to be the states that decide it, one way or another. That's my belief anyway. I think unless you bar something else drastically happening, and mind you, we'll know for sure in September or so when the polls really begin stabilizing, and then you could actually get a picture of where things stand. I think until then, though, you could reasonably say, all right, now that Biden has been replaced as the nominee, you can probably write off Virginia and Minnesota as swing states for now, unless, the polling in September seems to still suggest that. I'd say Kamala is probably going to win those two. But, at the same time, I'm seeing some predictions now, people saying that she's going to flip Texas and Florida again. This goes back to some of the rhetoric that we were seeing in 2020. I don't think there's any reason for someone to be that optimistic either. It's like, I think it's going to be the Rust Belt. I think, honestly, I think Florida's going to vote to the right of where it was in 2020. Texas probably will too. Neither will be competitive states this year. I'm just not seeing it. It's just going to be those Rust Belt states again. They're going to be the ones that decide everything. And we'll see what happens. A lot of speculation, as to how things will play out, or who the VP pick for her campaign will be. A lot of people right now, they're saying that it might either be... I want to get the names right. The senator from Arizona, I think it's Mark Kelly, right? Yeah, Mark Kelly. Or it could be Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro. But you're hearing more and more about Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. His name is getting floated around a lot also. So, we'll see. A lot of speculation, though, as to who the VP pick will be. It was funny. It's funny how it was when Biden dropped out. I had to record the radio, because it happened on a Sunday. I had to record the radio broadcast in advance a little bit. It's just the way that it worked. And at that time, when I had recorded it, the popular sentiment was that Biden wasn't going to drop out, and that things might come down to a contested convention. So, that was the information available at the time. I had to put the show together with that information, because mind you, there was no announcement. He hadn't dropped out yet. So I do that, and then I go ahead and get some rest. I wake up only to find out that he dropped out, and, and have that incorrect information initially go out. But I wasn't even upset, it was like one of those situations where it's like, what, it's out of my control. There's nothing I can do about it, So, and honestly, it wasn't a big deal. And what I did that evening was I got back to the microphone, and I recorded an addendum. And the listening audience was very understanding, which I appreciated very much. It's not something that I expect. But it was nice to see. And then you had the assassination attempt on Trump. It doesn't surprise me, I guess. Maybe it disappoints me a little bit. But the fact that it's already out of the news, and it's like, when it happened, people were saying, this is something that no one, regardless of where they stand on the spectrum, is ever going to forget, right? How can you? You look at the picture, people say this is going to be iconic, this is going to be in the history books, all this stuff. It's already been forgotten. That's the thing. Already has been. And it wouldn't surprise me if those pictures are going to fall into obscurity either. And you could love the guy, you can hate the guy. But assassination attempts of that level of, I suppose, intensity and severity, I just don't think something like that should necessarily be forgotten so easily. Regardless of who the subject thereof was supposed to be. Be that Trump, be that, if you had Biden standing up there and you had an assassin's bullet literally whiz by his head by millimeters, that shouldn't be swept under the rug either. Or if Kamala Harris, if something like that happened to her. I couldn't care less who, such a high-profile figure, almost having their brains blown out live right in front of the world to see. I don't know. That seems like bigger news than, it should just... But it's going to be forgotten. That's my consensus. And, I don't know, something like that. Doesn't mean that it shouldn't be... It shouldn't necessarily be talked about 24/7 or anything, but... It's just not going to be... I don't know, it's not going to be in the collective consciousness. It isn't even anymore. Years from now, people might only sort of remember if they see a picture or something. And that's it. People are probably going to remember the Reagan assassination attempt from the 80s more than they will this. But, that's all I'm going to say there. Look, I didn't even want to talk about this stuff tonight, so that's where it stands. I hope you listen, like I said, if you have the ability, to listen to the shows that I did about both of these things. I was in better spirits, and I was hoping, and I knew that that it was wishful thinking, right? There were a little bit of unity, right? That people maybe sort of came to their senses a little bit and realized, hey, trying to blow the head off of politicians, maybe that's taken things a little too far. Maybe we should be better than this, try to strive to be a little bit better. Hell, I still believe that. I still think we shouldn't stoop to that level. Political violence on any side. It's not right, It's not the world that I want to see. It's not the world I want to be in, honestly. One of those moments you sit there and you think, we could, right? And the magic word is could. We could be. We could be. We could have been. So much better than that. But, evidently, when there's that choice, we're always going to go with the absolute bottom of the barrel and the most degenerated, animalistic, violent, senseless rhetoric and behavior once again prevails. Because I guess we're just not there yet. And I tell you, you want to talk about what's holding humanity back. There you go. This constant... What's the right word? Not reversion, I guess. Well, maybe reversion is the right word. And this doesn't apply to everyone. Look, there's a lot of good people out there, but there's just not enough. See, that's the thing. There's just not enough. There's too many folks who, if there's let's say a metaphorical fork in the road, and one path is to try to be mature and think critically and try to have a dignified society, a productive society, a practical utopia, or the other choice is hedonism, selfishness, and just this utterly imbecilic rationale where it's like, I'm going to screw everyone else over just so I could benefit in some small way, some small, insignificant, in the grand scheme of things, way. There's people, without a shadow of a doubt, that are going to go that route. And that's why I'm not even optimistic, long-term, for the future of humanity. We're probably, as a species, just going to cease to exist in, who knows? We'll be lucky in a couple thousand years, but you always like to be optimistic when you think of the future, and you think one day it's going to be like if you could get in a time machine, and it would be this utopia, where everyone just gets it, and it's not by force. It's not like people have their brains messed up or something from birth. It's just an advanced civilization wherein people know right from wrong, and have this level of acceptance and understanding, perhaps, and of just everything that is nearly inconceivable today. And you would have these wondrous technologies that would just blow your mind, and that's what people like to think optimistically, but when I see how we are, we're not getting there. I don't know. Even 10 years ago, thinking back to 2014, I wasn't optimistic for the future then, but I don't know. I know there's good news out there. I know there's good things that still happen, but look, you ask yourself this question: how can you not feel a bit let down when you want to hope for the best, and you want to be optimistic, and you want to think, look, I know I see things through the lens that I do, but maybe I'm going to get proven wrong this time around, and it's going to be one of those times where I'm going to be pleasantly surprised, where, I might assume the worst in a lot of things. I might assume the worst in a lot of humanity. But maybe this is one of those times where I didn't think people would actually come together like this. I thought they'd be screwing each other over and stabbing each other in the back and regressing as usual, and instead they didn't. They actually came together, and they put aside their differences, and something good actually happened. But so often it's just more of the same. I want to be wrong, and I hope for a day when good prevails. I just wish that people were, better than they actually are. Maybe there was a time when they were. Maybe I've always believed a lie. I don't know. I just want to end this pessimistic, probably extremely negative spiel with a short note. Things aren't easy these days, with pretty much in every respect. And this is my belief: there are a lot of bad people out there. A lot of people who truly, by any interpretation of the word, are evil. I wish we had a society wherein people strived to be their best. And the problem these days is that if you essentially try to strive, to be your best, and you say, well, I want to try to be a better person, I want to try to, do more for others, etc. The problem is that there are so many evil, I don't even really want to call them individuals, because I think their existence is truly offensive to any decent people. Monsters, for lack of a better word. Because, some of them are so dehumanized in the first place. It's like they can look on the outside like you and me, but on the inside it's unrecognizable. And what I was getting at, is you have these folks out there in large number that are this way. And unfortunately they will exploit the good nature, the goodwill, the good deeds of others for their selfish gain. And that's the worst, people that are actually trying to do something good. And they get either manipulated or taken advantage of or screwed over or whatever by these monsters, essentially. And that's why I throw in a caveat. Look, I agree with the phrase, be the change you want to see in the world. I agree with that completely. Because how else can things get any better? But you have to have your wits about you too. You have to have your guard up. You have to. There's no other way around it. Be the best you can be. And be that change that you want to see in the world. But, for God's sake, I beg of you, dear listener, keep your head on a swivel. And keep your guard up, too. And look, if there's some things or people that you get a bad feeling about, listen to that gut feeling. Just listen to it. Because more likely than not, you're feeling that way for a reason. And the last thing I want to say is that it might not seem like much, especially when you see the scope and scale and magnitude of so many of the problems that plague us to this day that seem insurmountable. But do not forget that sometimes even small little actions, small little good deeds, small little acts of kindness, even if it's just in some small town on an individual level, never underestimate the impact that they can have. And the change that even small acts like that can make. Keep your guard up, but to the best you can, try to keep your head up too. And that's easier said than done. But we've just got to try, one day to the next. And that's all you really can do. That's all I really want to talk about tonight. I want to take another quick break. There are 2 more sponsors that I want to put in, and I just wanted to sort of give a little bit of a break here just because I didn't want to overwhelm everyone. So just take a listen, just a quick little break, and then we'll be right back with the show. Check out Drew Buxton's exciting new book, So Much Heart, out now from With an X Books. It's a literary short story collection with speculative horror elements that has received praise from Nylon, Southwest Review, Chicago Review of Books, and the Southern Review of Books, among other outlets. Nylon named it a must-read, writing, Drew Buxton's debut short story collection exposes the wiry underbelly of things, schemes, addiction, intrusive thoughts, masculinity, American mythology, with a beating heart interested most in affirming the strangeness of his life. Southwest Review says of So Much Heart, what makes these stories truly special, what turbocharges them, is their departure from realism into bent and refracted versions of past, contemporary, and future Americas. The book is available for purchase at withanxbooks.com/store. That's WITHANXBOOKS.com/store. books.com/store, with an X, books.com/store. Or for more information, visit drewbuxton.com. That's DREWBUXTON.com. drewbuxton.com. Finally, an original news story, an instant classic for all ages. Introducing The Spirits of Shylork, a strange book for strange times. It will have you laughing 1 minute and crying the next. At once a fantasy and mystery, a love story and a tragedy. The Spirits of Shylork will stay with you for the rest of your life. With a flash of light seen across the world, the rulers of Earth disappear, and a heavenly land, Shylork, emerges amongst the ruins, beckoning the world's stray inhabitants to its shores, brimming with life and peace at last. But soon, the deranged Count Kazoo, the most evil duck there ever was, turns their heaven into hell, engulfing the land in fire and a sterilizing potion, starving its citizens. It takes the great Orion Lumenbeak, a mystical rooster bestowed with a divine gift and a secret seed, to save Shylork again. With it, he grows the otherworldly dibble-dabble vine, whose fruit nurtures the animals back to health. Crowned king, Lumenbeak promises Shylorkians his continued protection and peace forevermore. But one day an unknown enemy of only their worst nightmare brings fire and starvation to Shylork again. Amidst chaos and betrayal, Shylork is plunged back into darkness and under new, diabolical leadership. The dream of Shylork seems destined to die forever, until two friends, refusing to give up hope, hatch a dangerous plan. The Spirits of Shylork is an epic story of the power of love and hatred, good and evil, faith and despair, and the mysterious forces that intertwine and inspire all life on Earth. Take a break from the news and social media and enter a new world, Shylork, free on Kindle Unlimited or only $2.99 on Amazon Kindle. Also available in paperback. You won't be able to put it down. Check it out. The Spirits of Shylork. And that's spelt Shylork. So that was all I really wanted to talk about tonight. So now what I want to do is open up the email, break open the inbox, and see if anyone has any comments, questions, pieces of feedback, topic suggestions. The Mailbag Show has commenced. It is a blank slate. You are free to discuss whatever you want. Any questions, like I said, any topic suggestions, anything you want to share with me and the rest of the listening audience. This is your place to do it. All you have to do is send in an email to VORWINFO@gmail.com. Say whatever you want, and you might make it on to the next show. Like I said, it's a blank slate. Have fun with it. Take a listen to some of the feedback that comes in, and think about it. But of course we can't have this segment if no one writes in, so consider it, if it sounds like it's something of interest to you. And with that, let's open up the email and see what's in store for tonight's program. Susie checks in with a question, says, I hope you're well. You may have answered this in the past, but I'm curious. What does your skincare routine look like? You have great skin, and I'd love to know your favorite products. Thank you. Thank you, Susie, for your question. As a matter of fact, I'm actually going to send you a link to a video that I did, because amusingly, it might sound a bit funny, I actually did a video years back about that. I kid you not. So, I'll send you that. About 7 years ago. It's a half-hour video, but it will be able to answer that question much more, I guess in much greater detail than I could here on the air. So that has the answers to your questions and products and everything linked. So there you go. The most important thing, though, and for those of you that want to watch it, it's just called My Skincare Routine, and it's available on the main channel. Over the years, I've changed products occasionally, but the most important thing is just understanding what works best for you, and taking sensitivities and everything into account. But you just have to establish a routine, stick to it, and just try to incorporate it into part of your day or night. But I did a video all about it, so I recommend checking it out, and I sent the link your way. Aaron checks in, says, I wonder if you've seen the recent Wim Wenders film, Perfect Days. It's a wonderful exploration of everyday contentment set in Japan. If you like slow cinema, I imagine you would like this one. Wishing you the best, and I appreciate your podcasts. Aaron, thank you. I have not seen that film at all, but I appreciate the suggestion. It sounds interesting, and it looks like it has good reviews, too, so that's something I will note down. Thanks, Aaron, for the suggestion. An anonymous listener writes, I've been a follower of your channel for some time, and I appreciate the work you put in. I've been watching your VORW podcast, and I'm getting interested in radio and broadcasting when I get older. I was wondering what motivated you to go out there and create your own podcast, and also, was it a little scary whenever you created the podcast? Anyway, keep up the great work. Have a great day, Review Bra. Thank you for your question. I've talked about this in previous shows likewise, but to give a little bit of an amended answer to your question, it really wasn't all that scary when I did the podcast, and the reason being, and this is why, I started up the podcast after I had already been doing the YouTube channel for about 3 years or so. So it wasn't as though I was taking any sort of great leap. I was already out there for 3 years doing the videos, so there really wasn't anything scary about it. As a matter of fact, it was a little, less intimidating, because now I just had the microphone to worry about and not the video camera. So the podcast wasn't all that intimidating. It was more exciting than anything else. And a lot of that came from the fact that I had always been interested in radio and broadcasting, even before I got into Shortwave Radio. There was a time when I started out listening to FM radio, and even then, and now we're talking old school, this is going back to the mid-2000s. As a kid, I even had a cassette player and some blank cassette tapes, and I would actually set that up, and I would pretend to be like a radio DJ on my own little, make-believe radio station, and I would put together these programs just on that, and it was fun for me to do. And then with time, eventually it upgraded to, I would sort of record it digitally as an MP3, and it was for no listeners. I would make these little fake radio shows just for the fun of it, because I liked hearing the different radio programs, and it was fun for me to play DJ in my free time and, talk about whatever. So being that I had already been doing that for years, just on a whim, just for the fun of it, because it's fun to do, then actually getting to the microphone and doing a real show wasn't all too difficult, because, again, I'd already been doing it for the fun of it for a long time in advance. And what finally motivated me, to get to the microphone and do the program was my shortwave listening. And by early 2014, I was really getting into the medium. I was listening to all the international broadcasters out there, and it was really the experience, to hear all those stations from around the world and all these programs, and I don't know, that sort of inspired me and motivated me to finally pick up the microphone and do something myself. Now, I will say, not that it really matters much in the end, but the name I chose for this program, VORW, it sort of was a little bit of a homage to some of the international shortwave broadcasters that I would hear, and they're still around, because there are a number of stations out there that go by the name Voice of. For instance, the national broadcaster of the United States is called the Voice of America, the VOA. And you have some other foreign broadcasters, such as Voice of Turkey, Voice of Indonesia. The international broadcaster of the DPRK is Voice of Korea. At the time, back in 2014, the international broadcaster of Russia was the Voice of Russia. And there are other stations too, that have that sort of name. Voice of Greece, Voice of Nigeria. So that's how I came to name this podcast what it is. But admittedly, it's not the most SEO-friendly name in the world, VORW. It's like, what does that even mean? Because most people obviously don't even know there's a single radio station out there, voice of this, that or the other thing, so this name is just gibberish to most people. And as far as marketability goes, it's a horrible name for a program, but it is what it is in the end, It's like, if I called it Review Bra Podcast or something, then I'm sure it would be easier to find at the very least, but I named it what I named it, and there hasn't been any sort of mass outcry, even while this show has been around for a decade now, so I figured, what the heck, I'll keep it at this. But that's how it came to be, and no, it was fun. It still is fun, and essentially the most difficult thing was just finding my balance between motivation versus energy level versus what I could actually accomplish. And I just try to strike the right balance, and get things done. But yeah, it worked out. It worked out better than I thought it would, honestly. So, no, there really wasn't any sort of intimidation in my case, but again, it's sort of a special circumstance as far as all things are concerned there. Okay, let's see what else we've got. Andrew says, can you review the new BK Mozzarella Fries? I was skeptical about them, but they're actually really good. BK's best item in ages. So what's the difference between mozzarella fries and mozzarella sticks? Like, would a mozzarella fry also be a mozzarella stick? But would a mozzarella stick not be a mozzarella fry? How does that really work? Well, let's look at the Burger King menu. I hate these sites where it's like you have to begin placing an order just to even look at the menu, but it is what it is. Guess it would be limited time only. There's those disgusting melts. Oh, there they are, mozzarella fries. They look like mozzarella sticks, if you ask me. What do they say? Burger King's new mozzarella fries. The mozzarella sticks you love, now made to enjoy on the go. Breaded, fry-shaped mozzarella sticks. They look like mozzarella sticks to me. I guess maybe they're supposed to be a tiny bit thinner? That might be it. Either way, I could see that having some potential anyway. We'll see how long it's around for. I might give it a shot, though. But Burger King items, they don't always have all that much demand. Thanks, though, Andrew, for your suggestion. Alex in Charlotte, North Carolina. As a fellow introvert myself, I would like to ask you if you have any nervous habits in public. What I mean by this is when you face confrontation with people, do you find yourself excessively tapping your feet, fiddling with your hands, maybe biting your nails? For me, I often bite my nails or skin, and I'm completely aware of this habit, and I need to try to stop it. Thank you for all that you do, Review Braun. I hope everything is well. Alex in Charlotte, North Carolina. Good to hear from you. In my case, I go out so seldom these days that it's hard to answer anything recently, but what I do know, and this is based on experience, I do know that sometimes when I would be out and about, I would have the habit of bouncing my knee. You know, I was one of those people. I would sort of shake my knee a little bit, but I don't know, is this something to help? It helped a little bit, one of those little nervous habits, I guess, but that's what I would usually do. I was more of a knee shaker. Sometimes my right, sometimes my left knee, sometimes both at the same time. And be one of those things that sometimes I wouldn't even be aware of it, but that's how it was for me. Podcast question. This is an interesting one. It comes in from Dasi in Northern California. First time writing in, and you ask, my question is, have you had any negative experiences with roaches, other bugs/insects, perhaps rodents? Here in California, they are a huge problem, especially in apartment complexes. At night, at least in the cities, they are everywhere. We also have a lot of restaurants frequently becoming infested with cockroaches, and I myself have seen them in broad daylight in several establishments. It is quite disturbing and unsanitary. Of course, I leave immediately if I see any, at, say, a restaurant or gas station, but it's such a common experience for me here. It makes me more avoidant of eating indoors at any restaurant. I've also had to move from one place and throw away a good portion of my belongings because of how bad an infestation was. I'm guessing Florida is much worse due to the increased humidity. Have you had any adverse experiences with pests? Do you do regular pest control? Not shilling any sort of pest control products, and I'm not really sure what compelled me to ask this, but I'd be interested to hear about your experiences out of curiosity. Thanks again from Dasi in Northern California. Thanks for checking in. It's a good question, and that's one that I could actually talk about quite a bit. So that's exactly what I'm going to do now. So buckle in, because you're going to get a full answer. So, interestingly, Florida, because number one, and that makes sense as far as California goes, especially with roaches and the like. Yeah, those things are creepy. And here in Florida, I have dealt with various insects, and I do pest control. I do it all myself at this point. There was a time, a couple years back, I hired some guy to go do it, but I carefully observed, what he was doing. And then I thought, I could just do this myself. And, I've got the resources where I can procure the sprays and everything. And I figured, I could just do this myself and save some money. So that's exactly what I do. So, I do my own pest control. Because sort of how it is with me, and this might sound weird, but if I have an issue, I make it into a challenge of sorts, and I kind of give myself a mission. I say, all right, let's say if there are ants, for instance, I say my objective is to follow the ants and observe them, see where they're coming from, and then either A, locate and seal their point of entry and subsequently eliminate the ants, or B, if you can trace them back to a colony and the colony is in an accessible but perhaps inopportune location to me, then destroy the colony. And I make that into a challenge and a task, and, I will get down on on my hands and knees with a flashlight and just watch them go around, and, it's like, oh, well, do you have nothing better to do with you, bro? No, I really don't, so. But it's like I have the free time to do this stuff, so why not? It gives me something to do anyway. And, so it doesn't bother me much. It's like, it's an objective, and then this is my mission, and I will go and complete it to the best of my ability. And when there isn't something going on, I do perimeter checks from time to time. I know the hot spots where they sometimes pop up. I spray the perimeter of the house on occasion. I do regular cleaning and vacuuming and all of that stuff, so things are pretty much under control at this point. But last major time I really had to deal with stuff was 2020, where I dealt with both roaches and ants. On the subject of roaches, there are different types of cockroaches out there, and the type of roach that you really don't want around, I believe, are the German cockroaches. And thankfully, I've never had an instance wherein I've had to deal with them. The ones that I have only had to deal with are the American cockroaches, or I believe as they call them, palmetto bugs. And, lucky me, the American cockroaches are, some of them can be quite large, and you'll see this thing that's like, in some cases an inch or two, longer, about 2 inches long, crawling around, and I just sort of say, all right, just smash the thing in, and then spray it and get to it. But these days, thankfully, I haven't seen a cockroach in a long time. So that's good. There really isn't a problem with them here, I'm pleased to say, and I think the perimeter sprays also help with that. But in 2020, there was an instance wherein there was a point that they were getting into the house. And one evening, and this was during early 2020, like the spring of it, when everyone was everything was crazy and everyone was locked inside their houses and all that. Those glory days, right? Don't you wish you could go back to that? Where, those are the best days, right? Where I was sitting here and, all of a sudden, I go into this room, I turn the light on, and there's like 5 roaches just all of a sudden, they're scampering around. I think to myself, what the hell? Because I had been seeing them periodically, but never in a cluster like that. I thought, what the hell? I got the spray, same old, same old. I thought, This is concerning. Never seen that many in one area. I'm spraying them, I smash them in, I'm cleaning the floor. Then all of a sudden another scurries out. And then another. And then I'm smashing them in. And it's like with every one that I smash, another one appears. I thought, this is unbelievable. So I thought, where are they coming from? Now, granted, these are American cockroaches. And as I emphasized, yes, they could be of varying size, but a lot of the full adult roaches, are on the larger side. But there were some smaller ones scurrying about likewise. And so needless to say, when there's this bulking 2-inch long roach crawling around, it's not too hard to tell where the thing emerged from eventually. So I said, all right, yeah, this is unnerving, but just keep your wits about you and watch this stuff, because there's bound to be another one that comes out, And then it was sort of funny. It was like after I smashed them a bit and I decided, all right, I'm going to watch, all of a sudden, they stopped coming out. I thought, I feel like they're just messing with me. So what I decided to do, I thought, I'm going to set up a camera, film the room, and exit the room for a little bit, because I don't know, maybe they could sense my presence there or something, or sense the chemicals and just see if things dissipate and then they come back. So I did that, set a camera up for 20 minutes. Sure enough, 3 more came out, killed them. But the footage proved invaluable, because through that I was indeed able to see the exact gap wherein they were emerging from. So what I said I had to do, I thought, well, I'm not going to like this, but it's got to be done. I'm going to have to get some caulking material, and I got to plug the gap. That's all I can do. And they might be coming out of the gap as I try to plug it. Oh well, it has to be done. So that's exactly what I did. I probably ended up killing like 20 more. I was able, though, successfully to plug the point of entry, and after doing that, it stopped. And never once has there been another instance similar to that, of which I am thankful. I was paranoid, though, while I was plugging that gap, that like some giant one was going to come darting out of it right as I'm trying to seal it, and it would, I don't know, crawl up my shirt or something, but that didn't happen. So that was the first thing. And another thing is ants. There are a lot of ants here in Florida. The ants that I hate, and I don't say that lightly, I despise these things. If they all keeled over right now, I would not mourn their passing in the slightest, are these little things called ghost ants. And those things are awful. They're small, they're fast, and they're slightly difficult to see. And in 2020, correspondingly, I was seeing instance after instance of these ghost ants appearing inside. I'd try to track them down, but for so long a time, I couldn't find where they were coming from. And there were lots of them, too, so I was very determined. And eventually, I was able to follow their little trails from the house into the garage. But upon reaching the garage, it had gotten more difficult. But eventually, things got to a point where I found them going into this box, small cardboard box. Opening the box, I found this old Christmas ornament that it was like 20 years old, I guess, but it was still in its packaging. And sure enough, they had, for one reason or another, I guess it just made sense in the ghost ant mind, to make a colony inside that packaging. And it was baffling as to just how many of these little bastards could fit in so small a space. It was unnerving and remarkable at the same time. I mean, there must have been thousands, we're talking. I mean, easily in the thousands. So, to cut the long story short, the colony doesn't exist anymore, and neither does that ornament. And no, I didn't hang that thing up as a trophy afterward. No, that was quite the process. Took a night, but I got it done. And I was also able to discover that, and I will shill the product right now, because it works. It works in my case, because, you know, when I was dealing with these ghost ants, you have all the different types of ant baits and sprays and all this, that, and the other thing, and seemingly some are more effective, perhaps for certain types of ants than others. So, like, the raid sprays, I always find those to be effective against carpenter ants, for instance. But those sprays didn't do much against the little ghost ants. What does work with them, more effectively than anything I have seen, are products under the Terro lineup. That's Terro. That stuff works. The spray kills them on sight. And the bait, particularly, I would advise, and you could buy this individually, they call them ant drops, and, you know, it's just these little drops of like a borax sort of blend. And the Terro brand, though, of the ant drops, those ghost ants, they love it. I mean, if you have a problem with ghost ants at all, and you can't really find a good way to get rid of them, look up the Terro products. Again, that's Terro, and you will be amazed at the results. The spray kills them, but if you want them to stay gone, also just use those ant drops. Because sometimes, you know, in years subsequently, I will see some ghost ant activity outside. Not inside or anything, but still a little close for comfort. And I will put down a couple little drops of the, what they call the ant drops. And those ghost ants, I mean, they will just swarm around the stuff. And you'll have them in the hundreds just feasting on it. And then they'll all go away before you know it. So if you're looking for something that really does the job and gets rid of them, go with Terro. And if you want to get the traps, get the clear ones from Terro, because those work too. So that's the way to do it. And like I said, I'm not sponsored by them or anything, but when I see a product that actually works in a way that blows me away, you know, and that exceeds expectations, I will recommend it. And this was, as far as ants and all of that are concerned, this really worked. Again, I could only speak for ghost ants, but I know I'm not the only person that deals with those little things. I was going to use some profane language, but I caught myself. Needless to say, I don't think very highly of them. But that's the solution, if you ask me. So, yeah, you know, there are insects and creepy crawlies here in Florida, but another thing, I think one reason why I don't have a ton to deal with also is that I am very friendly toward the local lizard population here in Florida. I really like the lizards, and not only do I like them because, you know, I grew up north where you don't see lizards in the wild, so it's still exotic and fascinating to me, but I just think they're remarkable beings. And all lizards specifically are actually quite intelligent, all things considered, and I think they're cute. they have their own little personalities, and I like watching them run around. They eat the bugs, and I'll sort of return the favor because I like them, and I want them to be around. So outside, I intentionally leave a little bit of downed foliage, in certain areas by some palm trees that I know they like to shelter in and hang out in. For the little screened-in area out back, I actually keep a gap underneath the screen door of about an inch or so, and some of the lizards will scurry in and out into the little screened-in area, and they're free to live in there if they wish and have some shelter. I even have a little bowl of water that I'll put out for them, and will keep clean. And I will see them actually drink from it, and I get to know some of the little lizards. By that I mean some of them have their own little nooks, that they like to hang out in, so they have their little spaces, and I kind of see which lizard is which. But I mean, there's a good amount. Like out in the backyard, there are days where I will count at least 20 to 25, and there might be more than that, and out front there are countless more. And then at night, I have outdoor lights that are on, and I have this big light out front, and at night you have tropical house geckos that come out, and they all gather around the light, and they will eat insects as well, and they're cute too, the little geckos. They're tan, and they sort of scurry around too. They have these cute little eyes. And there might be like 6 or 7 of them that they'll eat some insects as well. And those geckos, though, they are fearless creatures. I've seen some of them, because they're not huge. None of these lizards are all that big. Maybe a couple inches long at most. But some of them are smaller than that. So, don't think of them as like giant chameleons or giant iguanas or anything. But I've seen some of those little geckos. They will go and they will just eat this giant American cockroach. They'll just eat the whole thing, and it's like the roach is almost as big as they are. And they come right up and they pound, and they just eat them up. And I think, you go, good on you. So I really like having them around. And I think they do have a considerable impact as far as reducing the amount of run-ins I have with various creepy crawlies. Of course, things still happen. I still deal with them on occasion, but I bet if it weren't for all the little lizards out here, I would be dealing with many more. So, the lizards, I like seeing them. I'm fascinated by them. I think they're cool. They leave me alone. Heck, they don't even come into the house. It's like they have their own little territory, and they stay there. And the lizards, they don't bite, they don't attack, they're not aggressive at all. And I welcome them. I like seeing them. They eat the insects. And I just try to repay the favor in small ways by just offering them shelter of sorts and some guaranteed clean water for drinking and whatnot. So, I just try. I want them to stick around, and they do. They have, so that's good. So thank you for your question. That was a real good one, and I really appreciate it. Sam in Connecticut. 3 questions. Question 1. What is the current status of the Starbucks water cups from the Average Day video? At present, I am slowly transferring them to recycling. They were just accumulating too much space, didn't really have anything to do with them, so they are being recycled, slowly but surely. And there still are lots of Starbucks cups around. Question 2. Would you ever consider having a guest on the podcast or radio show? Unlikely. Question 3. Will you ever consider another installment of the Idle Mind series? I wouldn't say that's out of the question. No immediate plans, but I've no objection to bringing it back. Sam in Connecticut, thanks for writing in. Dakota writes, did you ever consider doing a meet and greet? I'm sure a lot of your subs on YouTube would love to meet you, man. I know I would. Been watching you since around 2017 or 2018, and would like to shake your hand. Thanks for the question, Dakota, and I appreciate your long-time viewership of the channel, by the way. No, I've never really considered doing a meet and greet, mostly not because I've anything against the good folks, of course, that watch the channel and listen to these programs, but mostly because I'm just very, very introverted, doesn't even describe it, reclusive at this point. So, even leaving the house for pretty much any reason these days is difficult enough. So let alone doing a meet and greet or anything, I don't have the guts to ever do anything like that. But, like I said, I've no aversion necessarily to saying hello to someone that watches these programs. For instance, if I'm out and about and someone happens to recognize me, I'm not going to run away or anything. I've shaken many a hand before, and I've taken many a picture with many a person before, and that's no problem. You know, as long as I would hope you're respectful of my privacy and all that, I will be more than happy to respect your requests, be that a handshake, a picture. There have been people, they've wanted me to sign something. I will do it. I don't care. It's fine by me. You know, so I've nothing against that, but like a full-blown meet and greet event, I can't see that happening. But that's just because of my personal comfort and nothing more. Jared in Port Orange, Florida, SoundCloud listener, said, I recently uploaded a concert review of Red Hot Chili Peppers when they visited Tampa, Florida on June 21st, 2024. And I wore my Report of the Week shirt on the video. What are your thoughts on this band? So, Jared, thank you for checking in and for your question. And, of course, for your support through getting the shirt, of course. Red Hot Chili Peppers, they are a group, and I'm not going to pretend, you know, because it's always silly, and of course, especially if you're a big fan of them, you could spot this stuff a mile away. I listen to a lot of music, especially from, let's say, the 90s, 80s, 70s too, 2000s likewise, but especially the 80s and 90s these days, and Red Hot Chili Peppers, of course, encompasses the span of eras that I will listen to primarily, but they're one of those groups that I've never really done a deep dive to. And what I was getting at is to sit here and pretend as if I'm some hardcore fan of theirs. Obviously, for someone who's an actual big fan of them, you could see through that stuff right away, and it sounds ridiculous. You know, so I'm not going to pretend to be something that I'm not. I've nothing against Red Hot Chili Peppers, but my knowledge of them is maybe slightly greater than average, simply because of everything of theirs that I've ended up playing on my broadcasts over the years, you know, and I'll research some of the music, but generally speaking, I'm aware of most of their major hit music songs. I'm aware of pretty much all their big hits, and a few of their more obscure selections. A very talented group, of course, but one that I can't really say I listen to a ton casually, but they've many a good song, and I think they're one of the, let's see, with 120 million records sold worldwide, one of the top-selling bands of all time, for good reason. But I'm not a super fan of theirs or anything, but I recognize the talent. They got a couple darn good songs, of course. And, yeah, if you like them and you're a big fan of them, more power to you. It's my 2 cents. Paul in Cincinnati, Ohio. Now you wrote, and I'm going to have to retort to this just because you'll see in a moment. So if you're listening, Paul, I'm just saying this so that I could get your attention, and I'll respond to this in writing too, but in case it doesn't get through or maybe you don't see it. You sent an email and it says, cryptid info. And you write, I noticed in some of your programs you are interested in cryptids and other such things. Here is the site of a former schoolmate of mine that has books and articles he has written on the subject, as well as podcasts. He is an avid researcher and writer of all things odd. Hope you find it interesting. So Paul in Cincinnati, Ohio, I appreciate your email, but unfortunately you neglected to actually include the link to the site, which I would love to check out. It sounds right up my alley. I indeed enjoy these cryptids and all of that stuff. It's fascinating to me. You know, some of it I think are just good stories and fun hypotheticals, and others, I really do think that there's more to it. And some of these I think are genuine phenomena, and are perhaps genuine creatures or entities that really do exist. So I'd love to check it out. And again, if you're listening in, Paul, please resend the email and include the link to the site. I know these things sort of slip through the cracks. I'm guilty of doing stuff like that myself, where I'll think to myself, oh, okay, just, attach this or that or the other thing, only to think heavily about it and then neglect to actually do it. So, if you are tuned in, though, just resend the email. I'd love to see that link, and I'm curious what this site entails. So it's something I'm looking forward to. Thanks for sending it over, though, the email. I appreciate the good intentions. Kenny from Michigan. I wanted to thank you for all that you do. I find your radio shows, YouTube channel, and podcasts to be some of the greatest pieces of media that the internet has to offer. I've been going through some issues personally recently, and have found some of your older shows to be extremely helpful while getting through it. I think if you would rather include voice memos in the show, you should. I always listen all the way through for what it is worth. I wanted to ask, what sort of lifespan does shortwave radio have left as of right now? I've been watching for over 3 years and have not heard much about it recently. I think this is starting to drag on a little, so once again, thanks for all that you do. Keep up the great work. Kenny from Michigan. Kenny, thanks for checking in. Glad the broadcast, by the way, has been able to help you through some personal issues, and I hope things get better for you. I really do. I say that sincerely. Hope everything gets on the up and up for you, my friend. And that's an interesting question that you ask, the lifespan of shortwave radio. Well, I'll approach it as a medium for international broadcasting, because the shortwave spectrum can be used for a variety of reasons. It's not just for international radio, but from the purpose of international broadcasting, being able to turn on a radio and being able to hear independent broadcasting or hear stations from overseas, get some interesting news and perspective and music and all that sort of stuff. I don't know, it's running out fast. I mean, I can't even begin to emphasize how bad 2024 has been for international broadcasting. I mean, it has been bad. I would say, to be generous, we've got 6 years left, maybe. And that's being generous. I would say between 2 and 6 years, and that's going to be it. As far as being able to use it as a means to enjoy and access international radio and various international broadcasters and independent programmers, myself included, it's got between 2 and 6 years left. That's my guess at this point. So between 2026 and 2030, and that's it. So, if you think back, and I say this to everyone, not just you, some of you might remember in 2018, when I did a lecture, The State of Shortwave Radio in 2018. You remember that? Think about the time from that lecture to today. For those of you that maybe listened to it when I released it or soon after, I honestly doubt it feels that long ago, right? I remember when I recorded the thing, I was pacing around out back, it was in the middle of the night, and I distinctly remember it, like it was yesterday. The amount of time since I did that lecture to today is pretty much the maximum amount of time this medium, as far as international broadcasting, being able to get much out of it, has left in it. That's it. I am convinced of it, solely based on how absolutely abysmally bad this last year has been. I'm cemented in that view. Because, you think about it this way, right? And actually, I'm going to pull up a document, because I actually keep track of all of this stuff. I don't think that really surprises anyone. But, so 2023 was bad, okay? 2024 makes 2023 look good. That's how bad we're talking. Because in 2023, the year started off bad, where there were a lot of stations on long wave and medium wave that I personally liked that went away, particularly RTL, Radio Luxembourg, Absolute Radio, they went away. The BBC World Service, they discontinued their Arabic service. Radio Austria International reduced all their broadcasts by 50%. You had RUV from Iceland. They closed down one of their stations. BBC Persian was discontinued. RTE Radio 1 left longwave. Then you had the BBC World Service that shut down their relay station in Singapore, which was the closure of a huge transmission facility. And mind you, the loss of these transmitting sites is the biggest damage that can be done to this medium, because the transmission infrastructure that goes into shortwave broadcasting is never coming back. They are true marvels of engineering, and they are some of the most magnificent radio stations you will ever see. They are on a level that is incomprehensible to most. You think of a radio station, you just think of the one tower for the antenna, and that's it. But, the sheer size and magnitude, these are stations that have 200 different antennas that are hundreds of feet tall each. It's incredible. So when one of these big relay stations gets shut down, no one is ever going to build something like this again. What's gone is gone. So the BBC closed their relay station in Singapore, and with that were probably about 10 transmitters that were also scrapped. Then in 2023, a US station over in Rancho Simi, California, KVOH, they shut down, they scrapped their site. and transmitter. Longwave station in Denmark closed down. Radio Romania International decommissioned 2 of their 5 transmitters, so they cut back considerably. North Korea discontinued a bunch of their broadcasts to South Korea. And then, now we go into 2024. In Cuba, all the transmitters there are pretty much just falling apart. Radio Havana, Cuba used to be this massive operation with probably 20 different transmitters, and now they're down to maybe 2 or 3, maybe 4 that work, and most of those have horrible audio quality, so they're a shell of their former self. Saudi Arabia, a country that, back in 2014, I remember, was on the air on dozens of different frequencies, is pretty much gone from shortwave completely. Almost 100% gone. Brazil, which used to have tons of shortwave stations, those are closing down left and right, some of the low-power ones. I think there were 4 that closed down in 2024. Radio Clube de Para on 4885 kHz, Radio Clube de Ribeirão Preto on 15415, they shut down. Radio Superrede Boa Vontade, they closed down also. So a lot of stations in Brazil going away. But all these cutbacks are nothing compared to what has happened in March of 2024, and then what happened in July. And that's what cemented my view that this medium is done completely. It's not coming back from this. So you have all these smaller stations, which, it's just 1 or 2 stations here or there. It's like a death from 1,000 cuts, There's so many of these stations, but one by one, when they start disappearing, eventually you'll notice it. But it's hard to notice at that moment, unless you really pay attention to it. But in March, you have the big broadcasters, the BBC World Service, or the Voice of America, these huge international broadcasters. And these are the stations that, if they make cutbacks, they will be noticed simply because of the amount of broadcasts that they produce and air every single day. And a lot of the biggest broadcasters on shortwave are, these government stations. So the Voice of America, the BBC World Service, Radio France International, Deutsche Welle, Radio Exterior de España, and then moving over to Asia, All India Radio, China Radio International, NHK Radio Japan, KBS World Radio from South Korea, and so on. These are the big stations that have a huge presence, so if they make reductions or shut down, then it's really going to have an effect. Well, in March, the BBC World Service announced that they have budget cuts. They eliminated 75%. And I say that again, 75% of their broadcasts they cut. So before these cutbacks, they were maybe on 500 frequencies a day. Now they're only on well under 100. And the English service of the BBC, maybe they had 100 different broadcasts around the clock, 24/7. Now they just have 20 that are only for a fraction of the time. So the elimination of all of these broadcasts of the BBC has been noticed far and wide and had a huge impact on the medium. Well, stupidly, I was sitting here thinking, well, the VOA still seems to be keeping everything together. And as a matter of fact, the VOA seemed a bit optimistic. They said, well, we're actually going to order some new transmitters for our station in Kuwait, and we're going to do some repair work on our station in Sao Tome and Principe. We're finishing up repairs on our relay station on Tinian Island, and it seemed as though the VOA was actually bucking the trend. Well, then July of this year came, and the VOA announced that they too are going to do a complete reversal of that, and they have eliminated in general, about 60% of everything, but for some particular language services, they've eliminated, for some, up to 90% of their broadcasts. So the VOA, this month, reduced their broadcasts by 60%, so they were probably on about 500, again, frequencies a day, every day, and now that's cut down to maybe 200 if you're generous, with some languages more impacted than others. For instance, their Tibetan service has probably been cut back by about 87%, and even worse, they're pretty much going to close down most of their transmitting sites. Just yesterday, the site that I just mentioned in Sao Tome and Principe is closed. That's gone. They're going to scrap that thing. So that's over. They're going to demolish their relay station in Botswana. And now this is the best one. This is the real kicker. You want to hear about government inefficiency. This is it on full display. So the VOA has a station on Tinian Island, which is an island in the northern Marianas Islands. Back in 2018, there was a very powerful cyclone. I think it was, went by the name U2, and it devastated the island, and therewith it devastated that transmitting site. So the US government said, this is in a good location, it's in a strategic location, we are going to make an investment of tens of millions of dollars to rebuild this station from the ground up and get it back up and running again. And they did. They repaired the station on Tinian Island, got it back to capacity. It took years. They finally completed repairs, I think last year, and now they're going to scrap that one too. What a joke, what a complete and total joke. It's like, go figure. Government wastefulness and inefficiency on full display. Let's spend millions of dollars to fix this station that now they changed their mind and are just going to demolish. So, how wonderful that is. And I don't think that's going to be the last of it. I really don't. I think that those plans for the new transmitters, you could kiss that goodbye. When the infrastructure to actually broadcast this stuff is destroyed, that's the real damage that's done, because technically speaking, and now granted, this never happens, when cutbacks get made, what's done is done. They are never reverted. Mark my words. But technically, if you wanted to get some sort of magic, technically speaking, if all the infrastructure still existed, right, then it would be possible to say, all right, well, we made all these reductions, but the transmitters still exist, the antennas still exist. You could still turn the station on and make these broadcasts if you want to, right? So if the infrastructure exists, cutbacks are still possibly reversible. But when the infrastructure is gone, you have sealed your fate. And they clearly have sealed their fate. DW in Germany, they followed suit. They discontinued pretty much most of their remaining broadcasts. They discontinued their Pashto and Dari broadcasts to Afghanistan. They discontinued their Hausa service to Nigeria. made substantial reductions to their Amharic service and Arabic service. So they've got like 2 broadcasts a day, and that's it. And, with these big names pulling out now, it's like the dominoes are falling. And I sort of think that these broadcasters were thinking, well, I don't think we're going to make any cutbacks or anything drastic at this point, because no one else has yet, and, maybe they see something that we don't. But all of a sudden, if one just pulls the plug, now the rest are just going for it too, and they're thinking, well, alright, well, the BBC did, so now I guess we can too, and, well, alright, the BBC and the VOA and DW, they're all cutting back, I guess we can as well, and, yeah. That's not to say, in 6 years, there's not going to be anything to listen to. I mean, for instance, Radio Exterior de España is getting some new transmitters, and Radio New Zealand is getting new transmitters, but the days of being able to tune around and hear a preponderance of signals, that's what I mean. That's going to be gone in 6 years or less. Like, even this afternoon, you're still able to enjoy it. I was scanning around, did a little listening. I was listening to this one station broadcasting to Eastern Europe. It's a Russian station, but I always like the music they play. They play a lot of, 80s and 90s alternative music, and was listening to that. Then I scanned around. I still heard some of the remaining broadcasts from the VOA. Listened to Radio Exterior de España. Then the next station over was Radio Ifrica FM, which is a government-funded broadcast from Algeria. Tuned around a little more, came across the Voice of Turkey, then China Radio, then All India Radio, listened to Voice of the Islamic Republic of Iran, scanned around a little more, decided to tune in to Radio Nacional da Amazônia from Brazil, then a little bit of the Voice of Korea from North Korea. NHK Radio Japan was a frequency over. They were playing some classic rock music of all things. Tuned into Radio Romania International's English service. I mean, so you could still scan around and pick up all these broadcasters. I mean, that was today. That was right here, right now. But I think a couple years from now, half of that stuff is going to be gone. And, because once the dominoes start falling, they're not going to stop, and they've started falling. And it's a shame, You see something that you really like dying, and there's not a thing you can do about it. Believe me, this is irreversible. Corey in New Hampshire writes, I had a question. I'm not sure if I personally have heard this question asked before, but I was wondering how you account for changes in your own tastes and preferences when reviewing the same fast food items more than once. For instance, in your most recent review of the McDonald's Smoky BLT Quarter Pounder, you stated that you are interested in assessing whether or not a chain is maintaining their standards. I'm curious as to whether or not you have given any thought to any change in your preferences and standards over the years, and, if so, how these changes, if any, might affect your ratings. So thanks, Corey. Good question. Now, that's the interesting thing. I just look at things based on what they're supposed to taste like, and how everything comes together. As a matter of fact, there are many instances where over the years I feel I've gotten better at sort of vetting my own biases. For instance, I personally do not like mayonnaise. Okay, I'm not a fan of mayo. Now, most people are going to gasp in horror at that, but that's just where it stands, I couldn't care less about what anyone else thinks of mayo. If you love mayo and, you put it on everything, that's great. More power to you, What is it to me? It's nothing. I don't care. If you like mayo, that's awesome. But I myself am not a mayo person. Now, here's what I'm getting at. A couple years back, well, now it's more than a couple now, if something had a lot of mayo on it, I would react negatively. And I would sometimes give something a bad review just because it had some mayo on it, and I don't like mayo. That's not right, right? That doesn't make me a good reviewer to do that. It's actually quite a bad review. And I came to my senses and I realized that. So now I think, well, most people love mayo. And I could understand, right, just because it's not something that I would get on a sandwich, I can understand the aspects thereof that people like about it, and why most people would want it to be on their sandwich. So now I take that into account, and when I try something and it has mayo on it, I factor that in, and I factor in, okay, does it have the right amount of it, or is there a bit too much, or maybe even a little too little? And because I could understand the qualities and characteristics that people like and expect, and that's what I factor into my reviews. My personal biases, it's like, if the camera is off, and it'll be like, alright, if I'm to get this again, you better believe there'd be none of this mayo on it, but I know that that is a minority view, and I keep my biases to myself, and I do not reflect them in the reviews. So these days the question pretty much hasn't much of an answer because I distinctly separate my own preferences and biases. When I do the reviews, those go right out the door. And those only apply when the camera's off and I'm eating the food for myself, So, I hope that helped. That was an interesting question. Ken writes, what is one thing in your food reviews that you most dreaded trying? Something you would have never eaten, but not for having to review it. It's funny, Ken, because I just mentioned that you write in your email, I can't eat anything with mayonnaise, so I give you big credit for getting through the foods you have covered. Oh, believe me, Ken, I'm right there with you. And it's so funny. I didn't even line it up that way. I'm right there with you, Ken. I'm the same way. I could stomach it, of course, but if I'm gonna get something, I get it sans mayo. Just for me to eat and enjoy. Oh gosh, a lot. Believe me, there is a lot out there that I review that it's like I would never eat it again. Pretty much anything from Taco Bell. 100% will never eat that stuff. I just get Taco Bell to review. I've probably haven't gotten anything from Taco Bell to casually eat in probably years and years at this point. But especially, because Taco Bell, that's an easy answer. One thing I know for sure is those things from Little Caesars. What do they call it? The calzone. Oh my god. That is something that I could... You couldn't pay me to get something, to ever get that, to actually eat, ever. The thing is just... And it's one of these things that's bizarre, because technically speaking, maybe it shouldn't elicit this sort of reaction, but when I see these things, the calzone, the crazy calzone, or whatever it is from Little Caesars, I mean, this is just total revulsion on my end. Like, this is something that has no right existing. Now, it's probably just because it's Little Caesars that makes it, but, oh my god. The thing is, like, it creeps me out. I mean, and it scares me. It really does. This is something that the way that it looks, it's as if it's some sort of either abomination that was made in a lab that should never have existed in the first place, or it looks like some alien specimen, and you would almost think that the center mass where the pizza is, like, would start, I don't know, like pulsating up and down, God, that thing. I just hate everything about it. And, I'll tell you what, though, I reviewed, and this goes for bias, I reviewed the 4-quarter calzone in 2023. I said, look, when I got into the camera, I said, look, all this stuff about this being some abomination that shouldn't even exist, or being some alien specimen that goes out the door, okay? Just take a bite out of it, and does it taste good or not? And it was better than I thought it was going to be, and I gave it a good review, too. But those, I really, really don't look forward to those. Really, I mean, that is one of those things that if I didn't think there was interest in it, I just wouldn't review it. Bob checks in. Please review the Rally's Brisket Boss Witch. I find it a delightful meal. Rally's. Are there even a Rally's nearby? Oh, okay. Oh, it's one of those places where it's sort of like Carl's Jr. and Hardee's, where it's like, okay, Checkers and Rally's. Okay, see, it's Checkers in my area. And there is one nearby. The Boss? Is that the one? Not really seeing anything brisket-wise. Maybe it's already gone. Let me check the Rally's website, because I looked at Checkers, because that's the only thing I can... It's the only thing I can get. I'm not seeing anything. Well, if you get any more information, Bob, send it over. JD from the sunny San Fernando Valley, California, writes, if you were put on death row, what would be your last meal request? Anything goes. Interesting question, JD. Thanks for writing in. Oh, it's funny. It's one of those, questions that people would really put a lot of thought into, but me, it's like, I don't really care. I just sort of take it as it is, I haven't much of a preference. I mean, if my last meal ended up being the prison food, so be it, right? I don't care. If I had a choice, I wouldn't be anything extravagant, wouldn't be anything crazy. Knowing me, I'd probably go with pizza. I like pizza. It's one of my favorite foods, so I'd probably go with pizza from somewhere. I don't know where. Probably get a pepperoni pizza and hope that it's done all right. Because I know a lot of people would say, well, I'm going to go with like a steak or some finest, like really high class gourmet meal, but I don't think I would, because it's like, okay, I can understand the rationale behind that, and if someone wants to do that, that's fine, but for me, I would rather go with some sort of meal that is of significance to me, even if it might not be like how most people would say, oh, I want to get the world's finest high-quality filet and this, that, and the other thing. It's like, yeah, I'm just going to go with some pizza, probably, because that's a food that I've always enjoyed for my entire life, and, it's been a part of my life, to an extent anyway, as far as food is concerned, right? Because I've always liked pizza ever since I was a little kid, and I still do. Still has always been one of my favorite foods, so you would think, well, if I were given that choice, then I think that would be a good way to sort of end everything with, a good pepperoni pizza, just the way I like it. But that would be if I had the say in the matter. If it was like, honestly, if I didn't have a say and they said, alright, your last meal is just going to be the usual prison slop, I honestly wouldn't even be all that upset by it. It's like, the last meal thing isn't something that is of much great significance to me. I'd sort of just shrug and I'd be like, oh, alright. Another email comes in. I hope this email finds you well. I regret to say I first saw your channel a couple of years ago, and I immediately wrote you off as a troll trying to farm engagement through the novelty of your attire and mannerisms. But I'm glad I gave your content a chance, because even if this is all an act, then you deserve an Oscar, and you're still so comforting to listen to. And I'm not laughing at you, I'm just laughing at... I understand why people think it's an act and all of that. And I don't think this is any Oscar-worthy performance nonetheless. Anyway. No, it's coming from a good place. I appreciate your thoughts. Anyway, you continue. I just want to compliment your impeccable style, because I initially didn't think too much about formal dress at all until coming across your content. I'm sorry, I still can't get past that. Alright, let's get it together. For instance, this past Monday, we needed to dress formally in class, and all the guys were wearing their slim-fit suits. This was the first time I had ever looked twice, get it together, at the fit of a suit. Two and two checks. Sometimes it's the silliest things that really get me. Anyway, you said this was the first time I had ever looked twice at the fit of a suit. I didn't like how tight the inseams were, and all the pants were so tight that they looked like skinny jeans. I started to notice that all the pants were so tight at their thighs, it looked like they would burst at the seams. I never looked at these things until you brought them to my attention, and surprisingly, I agree with you. I much prefer the fit of your suits, now that I've really compared the two styles in real life. I doubted you this whole time, but after truly looking at the construction of them, I've been converted. No offense to slim-fit suit lovers, but if the suit pants are going to squeeze their thighs so tight, then just wear some shorts to really show them off. I don't have a question this time, but I just wanted to share this anecdote. So thanks for reaching out. You say, a recently converted slim-fit suit hater. Well, thanks for writing in. And I appreciate it, I really do. I know I was sort of laughing a bit, but it's not at you. It's just, there's some things that I can find perhaps a little silly, and it's nothing to do with you. Yeah, I am not a fan of the slim-fit suits. Never have been, never will be. Everything I wear is the antithesis of slim fit, and that's just my style. That's just the way that I like it. Believe me, they're just not... The tight stuff, anyway, to me, is very uncomfortable. And I prefer it how I prefer it, Now, people, they can wear what they want. I mean, a lot of people obviously like the slim fit for a reason. Personally, this is my opinion. Folks have the right to disagree, but I really have a strong disdain for the view that some guys seemingly have. Because some people have actually mentioned, they've said, why do you wear the slim fit suits when they're so tight? And they will say in almost a sexually innuendous manner, well, I want to show them what I got. And I've great disdain for that attitude. Strong disdain. I really despise that mentality. But, especially in today's social media age, you see it all too often. And that is one reason why they persist, these sorts of suits. But that's not always the case. A lot of the time you have folks that it's just considered popular, and they just sort of go with whatever's popular. Or whatever's even just being, whatever's mainstream, whatever's being on the rack. But, that whole attitude that you see people say, I wear the tight stuff to show off the goods. It's like, well, what if not everyone around you wants to see the goods? Has that ever even occurred to you? But, like I said, I know I'm in a minority, so I guess the answer is that an insignificant number of people don't want to see the goods, and I guess enough people do. I don't know. I just know I don't want to, and it doesn't matter who it is we're talking about. I don't want to see that stuff. That's why, mind you, everything that I wear is the antithesis of modern clothing, right? So when I wear a suit, I'm essentially utterly formless, and that is fully on purpose. Number one, because it sure is comfortable that way. Number two, I like the way it looks. But number three, that is how I am comfortable in, and by that I mean not physically comfortable, but let's say how I feel, right? Psychologically comfortable. So, the pants, for instance, are always pleated, they are wide-legged, they are drapey, and the suit jacket is going to be long, it is going to go well past the waist, it's not going to be tight, it's going to be essentially unstructured, it's going to have wide lapels, or perhaps be double-breasted. And like I said, the pants, are wide-legged, pleated, oftentimes creased and cuffed. And, so if you were to look at me, it would just be this sort of formless, drapey silhouette. That's exactly the point. So you'll have some people that will say, I want to show off this or that. For me, like I said, I am the utter antithesis of that. No one is seeing anything, as a matter of fact, and this just goes to me solely, but over the years, my own preferences of dress have actually even gotten more formal, in a sense, in that if you really pay attention to the videos, and then you want to go back a few years, you notice that, starting in 2021, I've begun wearing a vest with pretty much every single suit. Whether or not the vest is even part of the suit or not, sometimes it will be a matching vest, and other times it'll just be a solid black vest in many instances. I wear that for two reasons. Number one, I love three-piece suits. That's always been my favorite type of suit, and ever since I even started wearing suits as a kid, I always liked three-piece suits. I've always been a huge fan of them. I just love the look. I love having a vest, and I'm a big fan of it. I'm very sensitive to temperatures, even here in Florida, so that extra layer actually does come in handy. But secondly, I didn't like wearing a suit without a vest, because even though I had the suit jacket, and the dress shirt and tie, I actually felt too exposed on the torso, despite wearing a suit jacket and dress shirt. And I actually felt a bit uncomfortable in that regard. So having that extra layer, that vest to cover up, because I almost look at a dress shirt as almost an undergarment at this point. So it's like now not having that dress shirt just exposed to the open air on the torso gives about a level of more comfort, perhaps mentally, that I much prefer. So that's another reason why you always see me wearing vests, no matter what. And that's sort of, you go back to 2021, that's pretty much all I wear in any ensemble is a vest, be that most of the time a formal vest, but sometimes a sweater vest. But there's always going to be that extra layer over the dress shirt, and that is very much intentional. And I sort of close this with the caveat by saying all of these preferences apply to me and me alone, right? These are solely my preferences as far as dress is concerned, because I know by today's standards, the views that I just expressed as far as my own personal style are so unbelievably conservative by today's standards, it's like off the chart, pretty much. But I apply these standards to me and only to me. Believe me, I'm not going to sit here and be aghast that not everyone else is wearing a three-piece suit at all times. It's like, look, I despise the attitude, like I said, of some guy wanting to wear tight pants to show off his crotch to the world, as if that's what every last living being wants to see. But in the end, look, if someone wants to wear a slim-fit suit, I'm not going to stop them from wearing that. I'm not going to get in front of them and put my arms out and say, no, you are not buying this. It's like, look, I know that I am the minority here, view-wise. I know that the rest of the world sees things in a different way. So I'm not going to force my standard, which I hold to myself, to anyone but myself. And if someone really likes the slim-fit suits, look, I'm not going to hate them for that. I might not like the way it looks, but hey, if they like the way that it looks, then that's what they like. I would just be lying if I said that some of the reasons people have, I guess, don't bother me in a sense, because they do. And but it is what it is. Like I said, I can't do anything about that either. Mr. Crabapples, champion of champions, says, I was wondering where you buy your suits. Are there businesses that specialize in that style you wear, or do you have to purchase them used? Now, these days, I just have to purchase them used, and sadly, they're getting harder and harder to find. Now, don't give up, because they're still out there, but they are getting more and more difficult, so you gotta go used, and just, I still get the best deals from eBay. I know a lot of those other sites now are more popular, like sites like, what are they? Poshmark and Depop and Mercari and all of that stuff. But eBay still has the best deals, and that's where I've found still the best quality. A lot of the stuff from those other sites is just, I don't know. You'll find stuff that's been crumpled in a bowl for 20 years and is stained or torn, and people actually have the gall to try to sell it. So eBay is still the best bet. And otherwise, try thrift stores and secondhand stores. It's still tough to find, too. They're getting more and more difficult, but they're still out there. Like I mentioned earlier in the year, I got 2 suits still in that style, from eBay, but they're in great quality. They might say they're used, but you would have no idea. All the clothing I buy pretty much is used, because I can't find it anywhere else. But my recommendation would be to, just try to go the used route, and again, look online, or go to some thrift stores, and see what you find, because there's still some good stuff out there. It's tricky to find, but it's not impossible. But it is getting more difficult, but, just be vigilant, and there is some good stuff out there still, so that's my recommendation. Thomas writes, I've been watching your videos for the last couple of years. You've mentioned getting food poisoning several times over the last year or so. Do you think there could come a time where you throw your hands up and say, I'm done, no more, or I'm done with this chain? Unlikely, provided the reviews still pay the bills and keep the lights on. Probably these places will just have to kill me to get me to stop, and I'll just have to subject myself to some more food poisoning, so I could have a roof over my head. But no, I'll probably keep on, with it, but otherwise, if let's say something else comes along then the reviews sort of take less precedence, then there might be some instances where with certain chains, I might say, yeah, I'm done with this. I don't have to worry about it, so I'm done with it, and I'll just walk away, or at least review them a whole lot less. Places like Burger King and Taco Bell and Little Caesars, for instance. Then I'd probably be a bit more hands-off, and then I would be like, yeah, I'm only going to review stuff from them if it either looks really good or if there's just a huge amount of interest. So, that's probably how it would be. The one chain that I actually am walking back a little bit from is Arby's, but that's solely because no one cares about Arby's. So it's sort of like it's like a lost cause to try to review it, because no one really cares. So, I'm sort of backing off on them in that way, but that's about it. And with that, that's all for tonight. Thank you everyone for listening in to this latest podcast of VORW International. And until next time, be safe, be healthy, be the best you can be. Keep your head up, and keep your guard up, at that. In these troubled times, be the change you want to see in this world. I thank you all. Take care. This is VORW.